Sponsored by GameFlip, a global marketplace to safely buy and sell video games and virtual goods. Check out the description for a special offer.
Overhyped games that ended up being terrible. Nothing's worse than spending $60 of your hard-earned cash on a new game, only to be disappointed with the product. We've all been burnt by bad games at one point or another. Publishers and developers overhype their games, making bold promises and placing false hope into the minds and hearts of consumers. Here are a few of the worst offenders. Final Fantasy XIV Online. Despite amazing graphics and music, the first version of Final Fantasy XIV Online turned out to be a massive failure. Much like a cake that ends up raw in the middle, the game looked good on the outside but was mostly unfinished. Reviews and complaints got so bad that Square Enix pulled the plug on subscriptions and started over from scratch, crafting a whole new game. The resulting reboot, Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn, took place 5 years after the original. Reborn was well received by both gamers and critics alike. Now let us never speak of the failure that was Final Fantasy XIV Online again. Sonic the Hedgehog, 2006. The 15th anniversary of Sonic the Hedgehog came in 2006, and to mark this event, Sega released a game called, well, it was just called Sonic the Hedgehog. In it, the rapid rodent was tasked with saving a princess named Elise from Dr. Eggman. Unfortunately, the developers took a page out of Sonic's book and rushed it. The end product was a clunky game with poor controls, long load times, and a host of glitches. Sonic's all about speed, but there are some times when you'll want to take it slow. Star Wars: The Force Unleashed 2. The adventures of the anti-hero known as Starkiller continued in Star Wars: The Force Unleashed 2. Now, you'd think that getting to control Darth Vader's secret apprentice, a dude who wields the Force with unimaginable strength, would be a joy. But you would be wrong. Even though it captured the same size and scope of the original, The Force Unleashed 2 failed to deliver a good story and was bogged down by repetitive combat. It's cool to hack at enemies and mind trick them to their own doom, but when that's pretty much all you're doing amid a weak story, it kills the fun. This was not the sequel you were looking for. Knack. One of the PlayStation 4's launch titles, Knack had the duty of setting up the console's future and success. Let's take a moment to thank Sony that it wasn't the only launch title for the PS4, because that would have been a disaster. Knack looked like it could have been fun, but nope, the gameplay was terrible. Players would die from the smallest encounters and have to backtrack a ton. Not only was the gameplay frustrating, but the story was so weak that your rage at the crappy gameplay was canceled out by your utter boredom. Tony Hawk: Ride. Prior to its release, Tony Hawk: Ride was touted as the next major advancement in video game interaction, giving players a physical board accessory that would transfer your movement into the game. But it didn't work. And we don't mean it didn't work well, it didn't work at all. There was such a delay between what players did on the board and what happened in the game that it was basically unplayable. Ryse, Son of Rome. Developed by Crytek, the makers of the incredible Crysis series, Ryse, Son of Rome was set to be one of Xbox One's coolest Connect titles. Players took on the role of a Roman centurion as he embarks on a blood-soaked quest for revenge. But during development, Ryse underwent a bunch of changes that saw it go from a Connect-heavy first-person title to a third-person hack-and-slash game. When it was finally released, Ryse was beautiful but repetitive. Considering it was a launch title for the Xbox One, it should have been much more than just a button-mashing bore. Haze. Prior to its release, Haze was heralded as a Halo killer, but all it ended up killing were our hopes for a good game. This first-person shooter cast players as Shane Carpenter, a soldier employed by a corporation called Mantel. Mantel produces a drug called Nectar that allows soldiers to perform better in battle, but also warps their sense of reality with hallucinations. Between its unimpressive level design, lame story, and its underwhelming gameplay, Haze's developers must have been the ones hallucinating, thinking they could topple Halo. Duke Nukem Forever. Stuck stewing in development hell for about 15 years, Duke Nukem Forever was finally released in 2011. Unfortunately, the long-awaited sequel to Duke Nukem 3D had gamers wanting to send it back where it came from. Simply put, it felt dated. It was so bad that all versions of the game scored in the 50s on sites like Metacritic and Game Rankings. In the end, this sequel's dismal reviews nearly tainted the memory of the original. Not groovy. Aliens: Colonial Marines. Probably the biggest offender on this list, Aliens Colonial Marines was so awful that fans were unanimously outraged by its badness. Some say it's one of the worst games to ever be released by Sega. The graphics were lousy, it had shoddy multiplayer, incredibly stupid AI, unbalanced gameplay, and terrible sound. The developer, Gearbox Software, also claimed that the story was going to be in continuity with the films, but its lousy script revealed that to be total nonsense. It was so poorly received, in fact, that angry gamers actually filed a lawsuit against Sega and Gearbox. If you find yourself unfortunate to come in contact with a copy of Aliens Colonial Marines, there's only one appropriate reaction.
Game over, man! It's game over!
Good night, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to see more videos like the one you just saw. And leave us a comment to tell us which overhyped games you think should have made this list.